In the control room of the Heroes Association, an urgent call came in, marked with the highest priority level. All high-ranking employees instantly stiffened at the gravity of the situation. A secret known only to the highest-ranking members, everyone else in the room was quickly ushered out the moment the call came through. As the camera flickered to life, a woman with turquoise eyes and long, sickly-looking dull hair appeared on the screen. This was Skylight Will, known as the Oracle. She seemed disoriented, staring into the distance. "The prophecy has not been averted," she said, her voice heavy with the weight of foreboding. "The traitor is dead, and the child of chaos is on its way." A hush fell over the room. The high-ranking members exchanged worried glances. The gravity of her words settled over them like a thick fog. "I feel it. A new prophecy is approaching," she continued, her voice distant and ethereal. "In all my visions, where the child of chaos touches me, where it finds me, my future rips apart. Either something destroys my ability to see the future, or something intrudes within me, ending my future. I don't know if I will die instantly, or if something blocks my ability to see." The high-ranking members of the Heroes Association exchanged glances, their expressions shifting to concern. The fact that futures could rip apart when the Oracle was in danger was a well-known phenomenon. But the notion that something could block her vision of the future was chilling. And the fact that this occurred in every future where she encountered the child of chaos signified a danger unlike any they had faced before. "This is unprecedented," one of the leaders murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "If she cannot see the future, then how can we prepare for it?" A murmur of unease rippled through the room. "We can't be certain if this future will come to pass," one man cautioned, attempting to maintain a level head. "Remember, it's just a prophecy. It's an important piece of information for us, but we mustn't place too much weight on it. Typically, around 80% of these prophecies do occur or can be averted, but there remains a 20% chance that they simply dissolve into nothing." "I understand that," another replied, tension creeping into his voice. "But we can't ignore this. The child of chaos is genuinely dangerous, and we need to take precautions." "What precautions can we even take?" Another voice interjected, frustration evident. "We have no data on this child of chaos. All we can do is wait." They all fell silent, contemplating the weight of the situation. They needed to wait for the Oracle to regain her strength to learn more about the timeline and the specifics of this impending threat. Suddenly, the connection flickered, and the screen showed the Oracle again, her face paler than before. Her private doctor was at her side, his expression grave. "The Oracle has shared one more thing," he said, looking sternly at the others. "The prophecy concerning the child of chaos is still a year away, but it is approaching more quickly than we anticipated." The atmosphere in the control room grew tense as each member processed the implications of her words. The atmosphere in the control room of the Heroes Association remained thick with tension as the high-ranking members grappled with the implications of Skylight Will's latest prophecy. They exchanged thoughtful glances, each processing the weight of her words and what they might signify. "This division of futures could mean a variety of things," one analyst stated, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Skylight's visions have shown us how reality can be influenced by even the smallest changes in the present. A minor action today could unravel the entire course of tomorrow. Conversely, it's possible that the futures she sees are simply so unlikely that they won't manifest at all." The murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Skylight Will's abilities had proven invaluable, providing insights that shaped their strategies and responses. The fluidity of time and the constant shifts of potential futures were part of her unique gift, but they also posed risks. "We must remain analytical," one senior officer cautioned, his voice calm amidst the rising tension. "This isn't a time to panic. We need to think critically about what this means for us. We've utilized her abilities to avert disasters before, and we can do so again." A moment of silence fell over them as they pondered the implications. One brave soul finally broke the quiet, speaking aloud what many were contemplating. "But what does it mean that her ability to see the future has broken? How can we trust her visions if they're falling apart?" Another chimed in, frustration evident in his tone. "I have no idea what that means. It's like the threads of fate are unraveling." Just then, A towering figure stepped forward, drawing the attention of the others. Starbreaker, known in his civilian life as Theodore, stood out with his striking red hair, green eyes, and a bushy red beard. He was an S-rank hero, renowned as the strongest man in the world, known for his raw muscle power. We need to shift our focus, he asserted firmly, on why the last prophecy wasn't averted. This is more crucial than pondering the breakdown of Skylight's ability. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to Starbreaker, who continued, "What we often forget is that Skylight's power isn't limited to the future. She can also see the past. Since this vision of the future has indeed come to pass, we can investigate the past events surrounding it for further insight." The revelation settled in, easing some of the tension that had gripped the room. A few heroes exchanged glances, murmuring in realization. "How did we overlook that?" one questioned, shaking his head. "We should have considered the past aspect more seriously." Starbreaker nodded, his expression serious. "Exactly. We need to reassess what we know and what we can learn from past occurrences related to the Child of Chaos. That's our best avenue for understanding the threat it poses." For a moment, the room buzzed with renewed energy, a collective sense of purpose forming. They were a team, and together, they could find a way to turn this challenge into an opportunity for growth and preparation. Yet, they all knew that time was not on their side. Theodore, known to the world as Starbreaker, stood in the quiet, dimly lit room of the Hero Association's secret branch, finishing his final briefing for the day. After several hours of debriefing, strategy sessions, and reviewing the latest incidents, he finally said his goodbyes. "I'm off for the weekend," he announced, his voice deep but laced with fatigue. His colleagues knew better than to question him. Even as one of the most powerful heroes, Theodore rarely took time off, so when he did, it was understood that he truly needed it. Leaving the gray, nondescript building that blended into the industrial zone of Metropolis Alpha, Theodore walked down the streets in the fading light of evening. The Hero Association had many fronts, and this one, disguised as an ordinary factory, was far from the public eye. It was perfect for covert operations, but dreary and impersonal. As he walked, he took in the familiar sights of the towering city, a sprawling megacity filled with flashing neon signs and futuristic skyscrapers. People hurried by, oblivious to the towering figure of Starbreaker as he made his way toward the city center. He reached a bustling intersection, the sounds of life all around him. Starbreaker flagged down a taxi and was just about to enter when a passerby caught sight of him. "Wait, aren't you Starbreaker? Could I get an autograph?" the man asked excitedly, his phone already out, ready to capture the moment. Theodore ignored him, his expression tight. Without a word, he quickly slid into the backseat of the taxi and closed the door. "Take me to the residential district, block 35, he instructed the driver in a calm but firm tone. As the taxi pulled away from the busy streets and into the quieter suburbs, Theodore's mind wandered. "It's been a month," he thought. "A whole month since I've been home." He felt a pang of guilt, though it was muted, pushed aside by years of justifying his absence. Work came first. He was saving the world, after all. But still, the image of his family, particularly his daughter Camilla, floated in the back of his mind. The sun was setting as the taxi pulled up in front of his home, a large modern house in one of the wealthier districts. The golden light bathed the facade, casting long shadows across the garden. Theodore stood for a moment outside the door, taking a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. His wife, Sarah, answered the door. Her expression immediately shifted when she saw him. A flicker of fear passed through her eyes, quickly hidden behind a polite smile. Theodore noticed it, and a slight pang of guilt crept into his chest. She's afraid, he realized, a truth he didn't want to face. In his inner monologue, Theodore recalled the last time he had been home. The argument with Sarah had escalated quickly. He had lost his temper and struck her, something he regretted, but at the time, he had convinced himself it was because of the pressures of work, the weight of his expectations, and his frustration. Now, standing here, the realization struck him that these were just excuses. Deep down, he knew he had lashed out because things hadn't gone the way he wanted. Breaking the silence, he asked, "Where's Camilla?" "She's in her room," Sarah replied quietly, her eyes avoiding his. Theodore gave a curt nod and walked past her, the tension palpable. His relationship with his family had become strained over the years, especially with Camilla. He loved his children, of course, loved them deeply, but his expectations weighed heavily on them. He had always been a strict father, pushing his children hard to meet his standards, especially Camilla. Camilla was special, after all. She had inherited an extraordinarily rare arcanus, one that allowed her to manipulate gravity itself. Such power was beyond rare, and Theodore had placed the weight of his hopes on her. Her older brothers were strong in their own right, but Camilla had the potential to surpass even him, or so he believed. Yet, despite all her power, she struggled with control. It frustrated him to no end. He saw the greatness within her, but in his eyes, she was wasting her potential. He climbed the stairs to Camilla's room, his mind churning. She has so much power, but she's holding back. His thoughts were harsh, yet they were laced with disappointment more than anger. His frustration stemmed from his belief that Camilla wasn't pushing herself hard enough. He had pushed her too hard. He knew that, but in his mind, it was necessary. You don't get to be great without sacrifice, he told himself, but he couldn't shake the nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, he had been too harsh. As he stood outside her door, Theodore paused. His hand hovered over the doorknob, and he hesitated for the first time in a long while. He could hear faint music playing from inside, but he wasn't sure if she'd even want to see him. He knew he had hurt her, not just physically, but emotionally. Camilla had always been sensitive, and the pressure he had placed on her had driven a wedge between them. But he was her father, and he believed that it was his duty to make her stronger. Theodore opened the door to Camilla's room without knocking, stepping inside with his usual commanding presence. The sound of loud music filled the air, and Camilla, startled, pulled off her headphones and quickly snapped shut the notebook she had been scribbling in. She straightened in her chair, looking up at her father with a mix of surprise and discomfort. "You didn't hear me knock?" Theodore said, though he hadn't actually knocked. His eyes narrowed as they drifted over to the closed notebook. "What are you wasting time on now?" Camilla shifted uncomfortably, placing her hands over the notebook as if to protect it. "Just some notes, nothing important." Theodore's gaze hardened, and he walked closer to her, towering over her desk. "If you have time to scribble in notebooks and listen to this noise," he gestured toward her headphones, "then you have time to train or study. Do you really think you'll get anywhere in this world by idling away like this?" Camilla's eyes dropped to the floor, her fingers curling around the edges of the notebook. "I'm trying, Father. I am. But I need a break sometimes." "A break?" Theodore's voice was sharp. "Power doesn't come to those who rest, Camilla. It comes to those who work for it, day in and day out. You have a gift, one that most would kill for, and you treat it like a burden. Do you think that will be enough to survive in this world?" Camilla bit her lip, holding back a retort. She knew better than to argue with him, especially when he was like this. She hated how small she felt under his gaze, how everything she did seemed to disappoint him. Theodore stood there for a moment longer, letting his words sink in. Then his tone softened slightly, though the edge of command never left his voice. "Dinner will be ready soon. Be downstairs in 10 minutes." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "And tomorrow morning, we train. No excuses." With that, Theodore walked out of the room, the heavy click of the door closing behind him echoing in the quiet. Camilla let out a long breath, staring at the notebook in front of her. She had managed to hide the contents from him this time, but the weight of his expectations pressed down on her shoulders like a heavy cloak. Downstairs, the kitchen was filled with the scent of dinner. Sarah was at the stove, stirring a pot of stew. When Theodore entered, she glanced up at him with a soft smile, though there was a hint of weariness in her eyes. "They'll be down in a few minutes," Theodore said, though he didn't sound convinced. Sarah sighed and continued stirring. "You're too hard on them sometimes, Theodore, especially Camilla." Theodore frowned, leaning against the counter. "I'm preparing them for the real world, Sarah. This isn't some fairy tale where everything just falls into place. They need to be strong, or they'll be torn apart by it." Sarah set the spoon down and turned to face him, crossing her arms. "I know you're trying to protect them, but they're not children forever. They need space to figure out who they are. And if who they are isn't strong enough..." Theodore shot back. His voice was low, but there was an underlying tension in it. I can't let them walk into a world like this unprepared. Power is the only thing that will keep them safe, Sarah. You know that as well as I do. Sarah's eyes softened. She took a step closer to him, resting a hand gently on his arm. I know you want them to be strong, but you also need to let them live their own lives. They're more than just their abilities. Theodore sighed, looking away. For a moment, doubt flickered in his mind, but it was quickly pushed aside. Strength is the only thing that matters in the end. If they're not ready, they'll never be happy. I'm doing this for them. Sarah looked at him for a long moment before turning back to the stove. Maybe one day you'll see that there's more to happiness than power. Theodore didn't respond. He sat down at the table, staring at the empty seats where his children should be. One by one, the minutes passed, and none of them appeared for dinner. Camilla remained locked in her room. That and his sons were nowhere to be seen. A small part of him felt a twinge of disappointment, but he quickly buried it. They would understand eventually. They had to. He was doing this for their own good. But as the empty seats remained untouched, a faint, almost imperceptible seed of doubt began to sprout in the back of his mind. For now, he ignored it. Tomorrow, there would be training. Downstairs, Theodore sat at the dinner table with his wife, Sarah. The absence of his children weighed on him, but he pushed the thought aside, maintaining his rigid ideals. None of the three had come to dinner, not even Camilla. As much as he tried to convince himself that their training and discipline were paramount, a small part of him wondered if something deeper was wrong. Meanwhile, Camilla sat at her desk upstairs. She hadn't gone down for dinner, just like her brothers. The idea of sitting across from her father, exchanging the strained pleasantries of a family meal, felt unbearable. She wanted to avoid him as much as possible. With a soft sigh, she stood up and locked the door, making sure there would be no further interruptions. Returning to her desk, she pulled out her diary, the only place she could safely share her thoughts. She flipped it open to a fresh page and began writing. March 1st, 1375, in the age of Arcanus, the age of exploration. She yawned, feeling the exhaustion of the day, but her thoughts kept circling back to the person she had met earlier. Pandora. Today, I met someone. Pandora. I saw her for the first time during her fight with Phantom. She's incredible. The way she moved, the way she handled everything with such confidence, it was like nothing could touch her. I've never seen anyone like her before. Camilla paused, tapping the pen against the page. Pandora's image remained vivid in her mind. The ease with which she fought, the aura of raw power, and her casual attitude after the battle. But what struck Camilla even more was their conversation afterward. We talked after the fight. She's not like the others. She doesn't care about being a hero. She just wants money, and she didn't hide that from me. There's something so refreshing about it. No pretending, no pressure to live up to anyone's expectations. I admire that about her. I admire her. Though they had only just met, Camilla felt something strange, an almost obsessive fascination with Pandora. It was irrational, and yet the pull was undeniable. I hope she's okay. I wonder what she's doing right now. Does she think about me at all? It's crazy, isn't it? We've only just met, and yet I can't stop thinking about her. I want to know everything. Her favorite food, what kind of music she likes, what she does when she's not fighting. She felt her grip on the pen tighten, a mixture of excitement and unease building inside her. These feelings were too intense for someone she had only just encountered, but she couldn't help it. Pandora had made a lasting impression. It's ridiculous, she wrote, trying to rationalize her thoughts. I've only met her once, but there's something about her that I can't let go of. Something that makes me feel like I need to see her again. Camilla's cheeks flushed with embarrassment at her own words. She hurriedly closed the diary, slipping it into the hidden compartment beneath her desk. Her heart was still racing, but she pushed the feelings aside for now. Standing up, she stretched, a wave of fatigue washing over her. She crawled into bed, pulling the blankets tightly around herself. Yet, even as sleep beckoned, her mind kept drifting back to Pandora. Her strength, her honesty, her indifference to the expectations of the hero world. It was everything Camilla had longed for in herself. Maybe I'll see Pandora again tomorrow at the Medicup duels, Camilla thought. I hope she's decided to keep going. But will the villains try to attack the Medicup again? I have no idea. Still, it would be interesting. A fight to the death. Not that I actually think they'd be stupid enough to try again. Security will definitely be tighter this time. It probably won't happen. Her thoughts flickered as she considered the arena. And anyway, the duels are inside the stadium this time, which is way more secure than the racetrack. I guess I don't have to worry too much. With that, Camilla finally drifted into sleep, her thoughts swirling between Pandora and the upcoming battles. The weight of the day disappeared as she sank into the softness of her bed. The next morning, Camilla found herself training with her father in a specially reinforced room, the one they always used for intense sessions. It was designed to withstand the gravitational forces she could summon. Theodore, ever stern, watched closely as she worked to focus her gravity ability on a single point. This exercise, the one they practiced most, was the hardest for her. Her control had improved, though she never let him see how much. He'll never be satisfied anyway, she thought, as she purposefully held back. There was no point in showing him the full extent of her progress. Once the training was over, Camilla boarded a special transport for MetaCup participants. The vehicle rolled smoothly through the streets, heading toward the colossal stadium. As it came to a halt, the doors slid open, and she stepped out, her heart racing with anticipation. In the locker room, the smell of sweat clung to the air, reminding her that the battles would be far more exhausting than she had originally imagined. She found a clean, reinforced training uniform in her assigned locker, designed to protect her from accidental injuries and ensure that all participants had equal equipment. No cheating here. Camilla's first duel was against Mio, a wealthy young man with two distinct abilities: fire manipulation and kinetic absorption. She eyed him warily, knowing that absorbing kinetic energy only made him stronger, and his fire manipulation would be a real challenge. How am I going to beat him? She wondered. The more kinetic energy he absorbs, the stronger he'll get, and avoiding his fire attacks will be tough with my ability. She knew the rules all too well. I can't fall out of the ring or be thrown out of the stadium. If I do, it's game over. She stood on the platform opposite Mio, her heart pounding as the commentator. This time, a different one, with green hair and normal brown eyes, announced the start of the duel. As soon as the signal was given, Camilla sprang into action. Using her gravitational arcanus, she lightened the gravity around her body, crouched down, and leapt high into the air, soaring above the battlefield. Mio immediately retaliated, hurling fireballs at her as she ascended. Camilla dodged to the side, using a quick gravitational burst, but her momentum nearly sent her skimming over the edge of the ring. I can't mess this up, she thought, focusing her mind. She quickly shifted her gravitational energy to her feet, reversing the pull and sending herself plummeting back down. As she hit the ground, a shockwave of white light radiated from her, rippling outwards with immense force. The shockwave of white light erupted from Camilla, pushing everything away from her in a wide arc. Mio, caught in its blast, was flung backward, but that wasn't the only thing affected. Camilla's armor and clothes ballooned slightly, almost comically, as the force radiated from her. The energy wasn't strong enough to tear them, but the sight of her outfit puffing out was awkward, a sign of her still imperfect control over her powers. Damn it, she thought, adjusting her stance, her focus snapping back to Mio. He was still on his feet, absorbing the kinetic energy from his tumble, which only made him stronger. I can't just throw him around, Camilla realized. Every impact fed his power, and brute force alone wouldn't cut it. But that wasn't her only problem. He was already firing another barrage of flaming projectiles in her direction. Camilla dodged the first fireball with practiced ease, her body reacting almost instinctively after years of rigorous training under her father's watchful eye. Her muscles and abilities worked in perfect tandem as she darted across the stone platform, evading each fireball by mere inches. Her mind raced alongside her movements, analyzing her options. I can't let him absorb more energy, but I can't get hit either. As she sprinted, her hand began to glow with white light. Camilla concentrated, gathering her gravitational arcanus into a tighter, more focused attack. This time, she didn't need a wide blast. She needed precision. She aimed for Mio, channeling all her strength into a direct shockwave, one that would only affect him and the space immediately around him. With a fierce concentration, Camilla unleashed the energy, sending a powerful blast of gravity in his direction. The The shockwave pushed not just Mio, but the very air itself, creating a vacuum-like effect. One of his fireballs, hurtling toward her, was caught in the gravitational distortion. For a brief moment, Camilla saw the flame hang in midair, frozen, before it simply vanished, snuffed out by the crushing force of her power. Camilla's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. I didn't block it on purpose, she thought, her heart racing. I just happened to fire at the same time. The gravitational wave had distorted the space between her and the fireball, making the distance insurmountable for the flame. The fire had simply extinguished itself because it couldn't bridge the gap in time. She marveled at the effect, but knew it had drained a significant amount of her energy. That had been a lucky shot. Had the fireball been just a little to the left, it might have hit her. But there was no time to dwell on that now. Mio, however, wasn't so lucky. The focused shockwave hurled him out of the arena's bounds. He hit the protective barrier surrounding the dueling ring with a dull thud and slid down, landing outside the designated combat zone. The crowd roared as the victory was announced, but Camilla barely registered the noise. Relief washed over her as she saw him sprawled on the ground, clearly defeated. She stood, catching her breath as the adrenaline of the battle slowly ebbed. Her legs were still sore from the earlier impact, but for now, she had won. Camilla couldn't help but smirk, a small, tired smile spreading across her face. Camilla jumped down from the 1.5-meter-high platform, landing softly on the freshly mowed grass of the stadium. Her feet sank slightly into the soft ground, and she felt the cool wind on her skin, momentarily distracting her from the rising nervousness within. Around her, the stadium was an impressive, futuristic structure, its dark, shimmering facade adorned with purple and gold elements. The tiered seating rose at varying heights, accommodating hundreds of cheering spectators who surrounded her, their shouts echoing in a cacophony of excitement. Yet, despite the vibrant atmosphere, an undercurrent of tension hung in the air. Glancing up, she spotted her father, Theodore, known as Starbreaker, standing in the stands. He leaned slightly forward, a furrowed brow framing his displeasure as he looked down at her. His expression was a mix of disappointment and irritation, sending a wave of unease churning in her stomach. Hesitantly, she made her way up to him, each step feeling heavy, as if the weight of the world pressed upon her shoulders. The warm sunlight on her face did nothing to dispel the chill radiating from him. As she ascended the stairs, Camilla noticed the many details of the stadium around her, the shimmering purple lights pulsing to the rhythm of the cheering crowd, the smooth golden surfaces of the railings, and the impressive holographic displays showcasing the duels. Yet all the colors and lights faded in the shadow of the anger she felt brewing inside. Finally reaching her father, the initial thrill of victory faded, replaced by a deep sense of discomfort. Theodore crossed his arms, his gaze piercing, and she felt her heart race. What was that, Camilla? His voice was deep and booming, laced with a menacing undertone. You didn't tell me you were trying out a new technique. What if something had gone wrong? Camilla lowered her gaze, her cheeks burning with shame and frustration. I just wanted to, she began, but the words caught in her throat. You should have told me. His voice rose, and for a moment, the crowd around them seemed to hush. I can't let you be so reckless. If I find out again that you're hiding something from me, I will be much stricter with you. Do you understand? In that moment, the anger inside Camilla boiled over. She wanted to scream, to tell him how much she struggled under the weight of his expectations, but the look in his eyes silenced her. She felt small and powerless, like a shadow of his strength. Just as words were on the tip of her tongue, she noticed movement in the crowd. Her gaze shifted to find Pandora standing at the edge of the stands. Next to her lay a massive dog, so large that it should have drawn more attention, yet no one seemed to notice. Camilla found this odd, but couldn't quite place why. A spark of curiosity ignited within her, and her anger toward her father faded for a moment. Perhaps she could talk to Pandora. Perhaps she was the only person who could understand her. In that instant, she decided that despite the frustration still swirling inside her, she wanted to go to Pandora. I have to go, she said quietly, turning away from her father. Without waiting for his response, she made her way toward Pandora, the murmurs of the crowd once again filling her ears. Camilla spotted Pandora leaning against the golden railing that overlooked the stadium, Her posture relaxed amidst the vibrant chaos below. As she walked over, the shimmering metal warmed against her skin, reminding her of the tension still gripping her from her earlier confrontation with her father. I saw you had a bit of a conflict with your dad, Pandora remarked, her voice calm yet observant. By the way, he's long gone now. You don't have to stress anymore. Camilla felt a wave of relief wash over her, but was still consumed by lingering frustration. I know. I can sense his arcanus really well after spending so many years with him. I know when he's near or when he's moving away, she replied, her voice laced with a mix of pride and irritation. Pandora's eyes widened in surprise. I didn't know that was possible, she said, genuinely intrigued. Camilla looked directly into Pandora's violet eyes, a striking resemblance in their colors that made her feel a sense of kinship. Of course it is. It should be common knowledge, she responded, though her tone was softer now, more open. Yeah, well, I haven't really picked up on that, Pandora said with a slight shrug. Could be because I've lived at the ass end of the world, you know? I've been on the other side of the globe from my perception. Camilla furrowed her brow slightly, but held back from probing further, sensing that Pandora didn't want to divulge too much. They had a connection that transcended mere words. A silent understanding of each other's struggles lingered in the air between them. Both girls were sharp-minded and had experienced loss, their shared pain binding them in an unspoken bond. I lost my childhood, you know? All I've done is train under my father's watchful eye. It's like I never really got to be a kid, Camilla admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Pandora's expression shifted momentarily, her gaze hardening as she recalled her own loss. I lost my parents, she stated, the words hanging heavily between them. They were taken from me by people who thought they had the right to decide who lives and who dies. The bitterness in her tone was palpable, a brief glimpse into the storm of emotions that brewed beneath the surface. Camilla felt a surge of empathy and anger for her friend. If I ever have enough influence, I promise I'll help you bring their killers to justice. Or, if you'd prefer, we could handle it another way, she offered, her finger trailing across her throat in a subtle yet clear gesture, hinting at a darker path. Pandora's eyes sparkled with understanding, a hint of madness lurking within her gaze. Camilla knew they both danced on the edge of chaos, a fact that only deepened their connection. Sometimes it feels like that's the only way to deal with people like that. Pandora replied, a half smile creeping onto her lips. I just wish there was a way to do it without losing more of ourselves in the process. Camilla nodded, her mind racing with questions she wished she could voice. There were so many things she wanted to ask Pandora, so many thoughts swirling in her head, but something held her back. Instead, she focused on the bond forming between them. A bond built on shared experiences and mutual understanding of the harsh realities they faced in the world of heroes. Maybe together, we can figure it out. You and I, we're stronger than they think. And if we combine our strengths. But the weight of her thoughts pressed down on her, the fear of the unknown looming large. For now, standing together at the railing, they found solace in each other's company. Two girls bound by their struggles and determined to forge a new path.
Pandora and Camilla stood at the railing, their eyes fixed on the arena below. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as the announcer's voice rang out across the stadium, a female commentator with an energetic tone. Next up in the Meta Cup, we have Theo and Neo, she declared, excitement evident in her voice. As the two contestants stepped into the arena, Camilla and Pandora leaned forward, curious about the upcoming duel. Neo appeared to possess ice abilities, the shards of ice shimmering as they floated around him. Pandora found this weak ice power intriguing, guessing it to be either E or D rank. Opposite him stood Theo, who wielded a peculiar green flame that looked sticky rather than fiery. As he hurled his flames toward Neo, the icy projectiles shot forth from Neo's hands. But rather than shattering upon impact, the ice arrows became entangled in Theo's sticky flames, immobilized midair. The fight was swift. In mere moments, Theo emerged victorious. Camilla sighed, impressed despite herself. Next up, we have Makito and an unknown challenger, the commentator announced, her enthusiasm never faltering. The arena fell silent as Makito stepped forward, exuding confidence despite standing before a towering opponent with brown eyes and striking yellow hair. The muscular boy dwarfed Makido, who showed no sign of fear. Pandora turned to Camilla, asking, "Who do you think will win between those two?" "I suspect Makido will take this one," Camilla replied, watching intently as the combatants squared off. "I get that impression too," Pandora agreed. "His opponent seems strong and fast, but he won't be able to withstand cold flames." Makido unleashed his icy flames, a spectacle that drew gasps from the crowd. As they watched the fight unfold, Pandora shifted her gaze to Camilla, who remained focused on the arena. "I want to get back to something you mentioned earlier. You said you didn't have a proper childhood and that you don't like your father. Why don't you just run away?" Camilla glanced at Pandora, noting her curiosity. "I don't run away because it wouldn't make sense. My father would find me anyway," she replied, frustration creeping into her voice. "And I don't want to end up half dead at his hands." Pandora furrowed her brow, puzzled by the weight of Camilla's words. "You really think he would do that to you?" Camilla shrugged at Pandora's questioning expression. "I'm not sure if he'd actually go that far, but I know he'd be furious. Besides, I have no idea where I'd even escape to." Pandora thought for a moment, her purple eyes shimmering in the light of the small bluish sun peeking out from behind a cloud. "Why aren't you disgusted by my ugly scar?" Camilla suddenly asked, breaking the silence. Pandora smiled softly. "It doesn't seem ugly to me. It looks more like a trophy. Scars are reminders of past battles, carriers of stories. One day, I'd love to hear the story behind yours." At that, a small smile broke across Camilla's face, warming the tense atmosphere. Camilla turned to Pandora, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "So, why are you even competing in the Meta Cup? What's your goal?" Pandora took a moment to gather her thoughts. "Honestly, I want to prove myself," she admitted. "I've spent too long in the shadows, and this is my chance to show what I can really do. Plus, if I do well, I can gain some influence, maybe even a proper home." Camilla nodded, understanding the weight of Pandora's words. "I really hope we'll see each other at Helios Academy," she said, a hopeful smile on her face. Pandora shrugged, returning the smile. "You don't need to worry about that. I don't plan on getting knocked out in the early rounds." Camilla's eyes sparkled with ambition as she continued, "Okay, then how about we meet in the finals?" Her excitement was palpable. Pandora glanced at Camilla's outstretched fist, unsure of the gesture. After a brief moment of hesitation, she slowly moved her own fist to meet it. "You really don't know much about our world, do you?" Camilla teased lightly. "Yeah, I really lived very far away," Pandora replied, a hint of shyness in her voice. Camilla shrugged casually. "That was a fist bump, and you do it when you're friends." She watched Pandora's reaction, noting the curiosity in her eyes. "So, where do you live now?" Pandora pondered her answer. Lola, the large wolf dog, barked in the background, breaking the moment of silence. "I'm currently looking for an apartment with my grandfather in this city," she said finally. "But Mio has temporarily offered us a place in one of his hotels." Inwardly, Pandora reflected on their financial struggles. If they wanted to build a normal life, they needed a stable home. "It means I have to work harder to gain more influence," she thought. "If I get into Helios Academy without a place to stay, I'll end up in the student dorms." Camilla nodded in understanding. "That's definitely a plan," she replied, appreciating the resolve in Pandora's tone. Pandora yawned slightly, her attention drifting as the fights began to appear dull. "How many fights are left before it's my turn?" she asked, shifting her focus back to Camilla. Camilla frowned. "I don't have a bracelet to show you." Pandora scratched her head. "Honestly, I'm pretty broke and don't have many electronic devices." Camilla raised her wrist, pressing a button on her holographic bracelet. A small hologram flickered to life above the glowing pearl embedded in the silver band. The pearl glimmered with blue veins of light, casting a soft glow. The hologram was silvery and translucent, about the size of Pandora's palm, displaying the matchups of the upcoming fights. "It shows the predetermined pairs of fighters," Camilla explained. "You're one of the last ones. You'll be fighting in about an hour and a half." Pandora's eyes widened as she took in the information. "That's a pretty long wait. Shouldn't we go do something else?" Camilla hesitated. "Well, technically, You're not supposed to leave during the meta cup. They want to make sure no one is late. Pandora winked playfully, squeezing Camilla's hand. Come on, let's sneak out. It'll be fun. With a mix of excitement and defiance, they slipped away from the railing, leaving the stadium behind. As Camilla and Pandora navigated through the corridors of the stadium, the familiar surroundings felt like home to Camilla. She led Pandora confidently to a maintenance elevator, explaining, this elevator is used only to bring supplies from the lower storage up. But if we use the elevator shaft, we can get up to the roof. Pandora raised an eyebrow in surprise. Really? That sounds interesting. Camilla smiled mischievously. I've kept this little secret to myself because it was fun hiding from my father this way. He can't sense my arcanes very well, so I can hide from him much better than he can from me. With a gentle push, Camilla opened the elevator doors, which surprisingly slid open easily. Pandora looked at the doors skeptically. Shouldn't they be more secure? Camilla nodded. This elevator is rarely used, almost never, actually. Before them lay a dark elevator shaft, the only light coming from an open skylight above. Camilla raised her hand, and a purple light began to glow, illuminating the shaft. Just a warning, she said, I'm going to flip gravity for both of us so we can walk along the wall. All right, I'm ready, Pandora replied, her heart racing with anticipation. With a wave of her hand, Camilla twisted gravity by 90 degrees. Pandora's senses were instantly confused as the floor beneath her suddenly became the wall. She fell forward, and with a laugh, they landed against the wall, the elevator doors sealing behind them. Stay close to me, Camilla warned, carefully stepping upward. If you wander too far, gravity will normalize again. Pandora chuckled, shaking her head. You really want to hold hands, huh? But sure, I'm fine with it. She grasped Camilla's hand, and as they climbed the wall, Pandora hesitated, looking at Camilla with curiosity. You don't have to answer if it's too personal, but are you maybe a lesbian? Camilla paused for a moment before responding, her tone honest. I'm bisexual, actually. But it seems like I'm more interested in women these days. Pandora whistled lightly, surprised. I hadn't really thought about it before. As they reached the skylight, Camilla pushed it open, and they climbed onto the stadium roof. With a swift motion, Camilla returned gravity to normal, and they stood atop the stadium, gazing over the sprawling metropolis of Alpha. Behind them, the open roof of the stadium was a stark reminder of where they came from. Ahead, Pandora spotted Leon, still sitting in the same spot with Lola, the large wolf dog. Reflecting on the view, Pandora contemplated what she wanted to discuss next. Suddenly, Camilla broke the silence. You know, I actually like you a lot. Pandora noticed the directness in Camilla's words, hinting at a possessiveness that made her feel both flattered and intrigued. I find you pretty likable too, she replied with a grin. Especially since we can talk so openly about everything. Now that they were alone and hidden from the world, Pandora felt emboldened. So, since we're in this secluded spot, I wanted to talk about the Hero Union and their classification of villains. Sounds of the Metacup battles faded behind them. The wind played with her hair, and the horizon of Alpha City stretched out before them, bathed in the soft light of the late afternoon. The sun, partially hidden behind thick clouds, gave the skyline an almost ethereal glow. Let's talk about the Hero Association, Pandora said, breaking the silence. She kept her voice casual, but the intensity of her words couldn't be missed. Their ranking system for both heroes and villains, it's flawed. You know it, I know it. Camilla raised an eyebrow, seemingly intrigued, but shrugged. What's there to discuss? The Hero Association is crap at protecting humanity, and they're even worse at determining who's a villain or not. They label anyone who steps out of line, even if they've done nothing wrong. Pandora nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She felt a strange sense of kinship with Camilla, a woman who seemed to understand her frustrations so perfectly. Corruption and greed run deep in their ranks. Most of them are more interested in maintaining power than doing any real good. Camilla smirked. Exactly. They're too busy deciding who's dangerous based on politics rather than on who's an actual threat. They call it protecting the people, but it's really about keeping their control. Pandora's F rank lie detection arcanist tingled faintly. She knew this ability was limited, but in moments like these, it was useful. Camilla wasn't lying. She genuinely believed every word. The problem with this power was that it faltered when someone was intentionally trying to hide something or mask the truth. But right now, Pandora was confident that Camilla was being honest. Camilla glanced at her. What's with the smile? Pandora shook her head slightly, her grin widening. Just thinking how much I'd love to trust you. And you don't. Pandora chuckled, then motioned toward the edge of the roof. Let's sit. This is a conversation worth having while we enjoy the view. They both moved toward the ledge, settling themselves down with their legs hanging over the edge. Alpha City's skyline stretched endlessly before them, its towering buildings lit up as the day gave way to dusk. The distant glow of streetlights flickered to life as the sun began to vanish behind the clouds. Pandora leaned back slightly, ignoring the ongoing battles behind them. It's not that I don't trust you, she said after a moment. It's just complicated. Camilla gave a short laugh, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Complicated. That's a word I'm all too familiar with. You think I want to be a hero? You think any of this is my choice? Pandora glanced sideways at her, curious now. What do you mean? My father, Camilla's voice was bitter. He forces me to live this life. It's not like I care about being a hero. Sure, I have my gravitational arcanus, but I hate this life. I hate everything about it. Pandora's interest deepened. So why do you stay? Camilla's lips curled into a sneer. Because I have no choice. I have no other options, no other place to go. My father, he made sure of that. He has expectations, and if I don't meet them, there are consequences. Pandora felt the shift in the conversation, a deeper connection forming between them. She kept her voice calm, almost soothing. What if you could change that? What if you could break free? Camilla shot her a look, eyes narrowing slightly. And how exactly do you plan to help with that? Pandora smiled, a cold glint in her eyes. We could help each other. I want revenge on the people who killed my parents. You want something similar, don't you? Camilla raised an eyebrow, her skepticism clear. Revenge, huh? Who are these people you want dead? Pandora made a vague gesture, her hand sweeping through the air, hinting at something vast. They're not just one person. There are many, responsible for what happened. Camilla's lips slowly stretched into a wide, twisted grin. I knew it. I could tell we were on the same wavelength. You've got a heart as black as mine, don't you? Her eyes gleamed with excitement. Tell me, have you fantasized about killing them? About making them feel the same pain they inflicted on you? Pandora's answer came without hesitation. Yes. I've thought about it every day. Camilla's excitement was almost palpable. She shifted closer to Pandora, her voice low and intense. I knew it. I knew you had that fire in you. I can see it in your eyes. You're like me. Pandora watched as Camilla's facade cracked, revealing the madness lurking just beneath the surface. She was wild, unhinged in her desire for vengeance. And as Pandora felt her own carefully constructed emotional mask begin to slip, she realized how similar they really were. The hatred that simmered within her, her deep-seated desire for revenge, mirrored Camilla's. Together, their rage seemed to fuel each other. I want to know, Pandora said quietly, her voice carrying in the wind. Why do you hate your father so much? Camilla's expression darkened. Because he's a monster. He was never a father, just a tyrant. He beat me if I didn't meet his standards, pushed me to train until I could barely stand. He treated me and my family like we were tools, not people. He only ever cared about power. His expectations, they broke me. Her voice cracked slightly. His name is Theodore. But you know him better as Starbreaker. Pandora's eyes widened slightly. Starbreaker was a renowned hero, a symbol of strength. To think that behind closed doors, he was something so twisted. Camilla's eyes burned with a wild, fierce energy. I want to take everything from him. Everything. He doesn't deserve to have anything left. She leaned forward, her expression manic. And I will. One day, I'll destroy him. Pandora's own thoughts darkened. She could see herself in Camilla's words, in her thirst for vengeance. Their anger, their hatred, it connected them. As they sat there, overlooking the sprawling city, Pandora couldn't help but smile. They were united in their rage, in their desire to tear down those who had wronged them. Two broken hearts, seeking vengeance, bonded by their shared darkness. Pandora sat still, her eyes gazing over the skyline, but her mind was a torrent of thoughts. The idea of telling Camilla the full truth, about her chaos arcanus, hovered in her consciousness like a shadow she couldn't ignore. Logically, she had to weigh the benefits and risks, pushing her emotions aside for clarity. Camilla could be useful. No doubt about that. Having someone like her, driven, powerful, and equally vengeful, could help Pandora in the long term. But if Camilla knew everything, if she learned about the true nature of Pandora's powers, it could become a threat. Pandora couldn't predict how Camilla would react or what she might do with that knowledge. Could she be trusted not to betray her? To Pandora, trust wasn't a currency to be spent carelessly. There were too many unknowns. Keeping her powers secret allowed Pandora to maintain control. Revealing too much too soon would close off potential paths, and right now, Pandora wanted to keep every option open. She imagined herself as the center of a circle, a starting point. Around her stretched numerous paths, each representing a potential plan, a different strategy for reaching her ultimate goal, the destruction of the Hero Association. This wasn't just about revenge for her parents, this was about power, survival, and ensuring she was never at the mercy of anyone again. The vision in her mind expanded, showing multiple routes, each leading to intermediary goals, milestones that would bring her closer to her final victory. But if she gave too much away now, especially about the Chaos Arcanus, she might limit herself to fewer paths. Camilla might push her down one course, or worse, the knowledge could leak, and then the association would know what they were truly up against. There were other options. Pandora could accelerate her power acquisition by diving into chaos, literally. She could use her Chaos Arcanus to consume as much raw chaos energy as possible, becoming a living force of destruction. She'd be unstoppable, but it would mean sacrificing everything, her morality, her relationships, her very humanity. The idea of killing anyone who got in her way, of stealing their powers to fuel her own, crossed her mind. It was an extreme path, one she dismissed, for now. It wasn't practical. It was too messy, too loud. It would draw too much attention from the wrong people. Another option would be to hide in the shadows, lurking in darkness and slowly, methodically, stealing powers from the undeserving. She could operate as a ghost, collecting abilities in secret until she was strong enough to strike. But that life would be lonely, isolated. She'd have no idea what the Hero Association was planning, nor would she have the connections she needed. She couldn't gather allies from the dark. No, the path she had chosen was already in motion. She was at the Helios Academy, positioned inside the very system she sought to bring down. From here, she could gather information, grow stronger, and manipulate events from within. It was the perfect strategy. The Academy allowed her to remain close to the Hero Association while slowly undermining it. The facade of being just another student gave her time to gather power and prepare for the inevitable war. As she mulled over her options, Pandora ran her fingers through her hair, letting the strands slip between her fingers as if entangling the web of possibilities. She needed connections, favors, relationships that were mutually beneficial. Only then would she be in the best position to take advantage of whatever came next. Finally, she turned to Camilla, a decision made. "I've sorted out my thoughts, Camilla," she said, her voice firm but measured. "For now, we'll keep this conversation between us. When the time is right, when I'm powerful enough, we'll talk about our revenge again." Camilla's brow furrowed slightly, her sharp eyes catching the slight evasion in Pandora's words. "What do you mean, when you're powerful enough? What aren't you telling me?" Pandora remained calm, the expression on her face perfectly controlled. "There are things about me, Camilla, that I can't share. Not yet. But I can tell you this, what I am is more than special. What I can do, what I am, it defies the laws of the heavens and the earth." Camilla's curiosity flared, her eyes narrowing as she tried to decipher what Pandora meant. Was this just cryptic talk, or something more? But the look on Pandora's face, the seriousness behind her words, told her this wasn't a game. Pandora was speaking about something real, something dangerous. Against the laws of the heavens and the earth. Camilla echoed, her voice laced with curiosity and disbelief. What does that even mean? Pandora's gaze was steady. It means my existence is a violation of the natural order. I wasn't supposed to be, and yet here I am. The tension in the air thickened as Camilla felt a surge of strange emotions. Her mind raced. She was drawn to Pandora's mystery, her power, and her presence. In Pandora's company, Camilla felt lighter. The weight of her anger, her hatred, the crushing pressure of the world, it all seemed to fade when Pandora was near. She couldn't explain it, but something about Pandora made her want to be closer, to stay by her side, even if it meant becoming her servant. She shook her head, trying to dispel the thought. It was absurd. She wasn't someone's lackey, and yet, being near Pandora filled a void she hadn't realized existed. She forced herself to look away from Pandora and out towards the horizon, trying to focus on something else. Just as she did, her wristband vibrated, displaying the next fight. Johannes versus Martina, both from Metropolis Omega. Pandora noticed the shift in Camilla's focus and took it as a cue. We should probably head back. This match might be worth watching. Camilla stood, albeit reluctantly, still buzzing with curiosity and a desire to know more. But she followed Pandora to the edge of the roof, where the stadium below opened up. The sounds of the crowd and the upcoming fight reached their ears, but Camilla's mind was still on Pandora. Pandora glanced down at the stadium, then at Camilla. We'll take the faster route, she said with a smirk, stepping closer. Before Camilla could respond, Pandora pulled her into her arms. Stay quiet, Pandora instructed, crouching slightly before leaping from the rooftop. The air rushed past them as they descended, the thrill of the fall sending Camilla's heart racing. She felt alive, the danger, the closeness to Pandora, it was intoxicating. When they landed softly in the crowd below, Camilla felt her pulse steady but the rush of excitement lingered. Leon and the large wolf, Lola, stood nearby, but Camilla barely noticed them. Her thoughts were still on Pandora, on her power, her mystery, and the undeniable pull she felt to stay by her side.
And that's a wrap for today's video. I truly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and lets you share it with your friends. Your support means the world to me. If you click here on the left side of the screen, you'll be taken to the latest video I've uploaded. Clicking on the right will lead you to the playlist where you can catch up on any episodes you might have missed. And if you click at the top center of the screen, you'll head straight to my YouTube channel where you can find all of my videos in one place. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more exciting content, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and goodbye.